Model murder mystery. An Instagram influencer found dead in a Richmond apartment. The body of the man accused of killing her also inside. ABC 13's Shelley Childers is live with what we know tonight. Shelley.
Eric, she was known as Mercedes Morr on Instagram. Millions of people followed her, but police tell us it was inside her Richmond apartment behind me where she was found dead inside. On Instagram, she was known as Miss Mercedes Morr. Her adult content followed by 2.6 million people, including superstar Snoop Dogg and Megan Thee Stallion. Her real name was Janae Gagnier. The 33-year-old was found dead inside her upscale apartment in Richmond, Texas. Police say they were called to this quiet complex for a welfare check Sunday. Inside the apartment, they found Mercedes Morr and another man believed to be the suspect who killed her, Kevin Alexander Accordo. He was also dead, police calling it a murder-suicide. Investigators say there is no relationship between Mercedes and the suspect, telling us his last known address was in Florida. Neighbors we spoke with called the complex quiet and secure.
It'd be kind of surprising to know that this was an intruder, someone that broke into the house, because I wouldn't think that that would happen here.
Police have not said how the two died, telling us the cause of death will come from the medical examiner. In Richmond, Shelley Childers, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
Instagram model with more than 2 million followers is found murdered in Richmond.
Tonight, police say they don't know, or don't rather have a motive, but the suspect is dead too. Our Grace White is following the case.
Her name was Miss Mercedes Morr. At least that's what she goes by on Instagram, where she has more than 2 million followers. Her real name, Janae Gagnier, now dead at 33.
We pulled in while everybody was still here and the police were here, and the people were grieving.
Neighbors at the apartment complex in Richmond on West Point Circle shocked Sunday evening to see a crime scene.
This lady did pass away, that she was killed, and really that's all that we know.
And much about the case is still a mystery. Richmond police are the lead. All they've said so far, they believe it was a murder-suicide. The medical examiner says she was strangled to death. Found with her was 34-year-old Kevin Accordo. The ME says he died by suicide from multiple sharp force trauma.
Certainly we're going to be praying for her family. We know that it's a tragedy for the whole community.
A tragedy where there's still no known motive. Police say her family told detectives there was no relationship between the two, but there was no forced entry. Investigators confirmed his address in Florida, leaving family and friends to wonder if she was stalked on social media. But when we asked, Richmond police told us it's all still under investigation. Grace White, KHOU 11 News.
It was a quiet Sunday afternoon in Richmond, Texas. The kind of suburban calm where silence presses heavy against the walls of every home. Families were inside, curtains drawn against the burning August sun. Neighbors living their routines, unaware of the horror unfolding just a few doors down. Inside a modest apartment, the air was still. The blinds were closed. The lights inside remained off, though the day outside blazed bright. And yet something felt wrong, terribly wrong. A father's intuition is rarely mistaken. Janae Lynn Gagnier's father hadn't heard from his daughter in too long. Phone calls went unanswered. Messages remained unopened. She was never the type to vanish without a word. Concern gnawed at him, building into dread. He decided to check on her. When he arrived at her home, the silence was deafening. No footsteps, no voice, no music. He stepped inside, and the world as he knew it fractured forever. At the bottom of the stairs lay his daughter. 33 years old, beautiful, vibrant. A woman whose presence had lit up millions of screens across the world under the name Miss Mercedes Morr. Now she was motionless, lifeless. The horror deepened as he moved further into the apartment. Upstairs he found another body, male, unfamiliar, bloodied. The walls bore bizarre writings, scrawled confessions of obsession, apologies, and declarations of love. The apartment was no longer a home, but a crime scene, a shrine to madness and death. The father dialed for help, his voice breaking as he reported what no parent should ever have to see. Police arrived quickly, but the scene spoke for itself. There had been no robbery, no forced entry, just two lives, ended violently, in circumstances that seemed almost too surreal to comprehend. In the hours that followed, her name, Miss Mercedes Morr, would surge across headlines, first locally, then nationwide, then around the world. The glamorous Instagram star with millions of followers was dead, killed in what investigators would soon confirm as a chilling murder-suicide. And at the center of it all was a stranger named Kevin Alexander Accordo. But who was Jenna Lynn Gagnier beyond the fame, beyond the stage name, beyond the curated perfection of social media? And how did a man she had no known relationship with invade her world so fatally? This is the story of a woman who lived in the light of admiration, but died in the shadow of obsession. The story of beauty, fame, and the dark dangers that sometimes come with it. And it begins here, with the chilling discovery that shattered a family, shocked a community, and revealed just how thin the line is between adoration and destruction. Before she became a headline, before her name was etched into a tragedy that would haunt her family and followers alike, Jenna Lynn Gagnier was a daughter, a sister, and a friend. Born on November 14, 1987, she grew up in Texas, and like many young women, she dreamed of something bigger. She had a magnetic charm, a radiant smile, and a style that drew attention without her ever having to ask for it. Over time, that presence evolved into a persona, a brand, known to the world as Miss Mercedes Morr. On Instagram, Jenna's star burned bright. Nearly 3 million people followed her life, captivated by her beauty, her fashion, her unapologetic confidence. To many, she was the embodiment of modern glamour, perfectly curated images, exotic outfits, and a lifestyle that seemed larger than life. She walked in spaces most could only dream of, earning admiration from celebrities, influencers, and fans who projected their fantasies onto her digital stage. But away from the bright lights of social media, Jenna was quiet, even reserved. She wasn't the loud, untouchable figure people imagined. To those who knew her personally, she was soft-spoken, deeply family-oriented, and careful with whom she let into her inner circle. She lived not in a mansion or a penthouse, but in a comfortable apartment in Richmond, Texas. A reminder that for all her fame, she valued privacy, routine, and peace. Fame, however, is a double-edged sword. For every admirer who celebrated her, there were those who blurred admiration with obsession. Social media stardom, while lucrative and empowering, can also draw the gaze of strangers who feel entitled to someone's life. Boundaries erode, curiosity twists into fixation, and somewhere out there, one of those faceless followers was watching Jenna closely. His name was Kevin Alexander Accordo. Kevin was 34 years old, originally from Florida. To the outside world, he seemed unremarkable, no glittering career, no fame, no circles of influence. But beneath the surface, there were cracks. Accounts suggest he battled with demons of his own. Instability, desperation, and a dangerous fixation on the woman he would never truly know. There is no evidence that Jenna ever met Kevin, spoke with him, or had any kind of personal relationship with him. Yet for him, she became an obsession. She was not simply a woman living her life. In his fractured mind, she became something else entirely. A symbol, a fantasy, an anchor for emotions he could no longer control. To Jenna, he was a stranger. To Kevin, she was everything. And while her family cherished her for her kindness, while her fans adored her for her beauty and strength, Kevin's view of her grew darker, distorted by obsession. Somewhere along the way, his fixation transformed into a deadly plan. The contrast between their worlds could not have been sharper. Jenna, living for her dreams, striving for joy and connection, and Kevin, spiraling deeper into a fixation that would soon explode in violence. This collision course was invisible to those around her. No one could see it coming. To her followers, Jenna was thriving. To her family, she was safe at home in Texas. She appeared untouchable, shielded by the distance of the digital screen. But distance can be deceiving, and Kevin's obsession was no longer confined to a phone or a computer screen. He was closing in, step by step, on the woman he had turned into an object of fixation. What no one realized was that the stage was already set. Obsession rarely announces itself with clarity. It creeps in quietly, hidden beneath the surface of routine life, until suddenly it erupts, violent, undeniable, and irreversible. In the case of Jenna Gagnier, the red flags existed not in her world, but in the fractured mind of a man she had never invited into it. For Kevin Alexander Accordo, the lines between fantasy and reality had blurred long before he stepped foot in Texas. He was a man adrift, 34 years old, with no stable career, no clear sense of direction, and a growing sense of desperation. Those close to him would later describe signs of instability, as if he were spiraling inward, losing touch with reality. But the true depth of his obsession became clear only after the crime. Investigators would later uncover the ramblings he left behind inside Jenna's home. Scrawled messages across the walls, cryptic declarations of love, apologies, pleas, and confessions that revealed the chaotic storm inside his mind. It was as though he had built an entire narrative, a one-sided relationship, in which Jenna was the central figure. The troubling part is that there were no direct warnings, no threats sent to her inbox, no stalking reports filed, no obvious sign that she was in imminent danger. That silence, however, is its own kind of red flag, because in many cases of obsession, there is no clear build-up, no escalation visible to outsiders. The danger lurks quietly, concealed until it strikes. Jenna had built a career on being seen, but in that visibility, she became vulnerable to the shadows that visibility attracts. Social media brings adoration, but it also brings fixation. Strangers can watch, follow, study, and create illusions of intimacy. For someone like Kevin, that illusion may have been irresistible. And while Jenna's family and friends saw her as grounded and cautious, her online persona made her accessible to millions, including those whose admiration had curdled into something darker. On that August weekend, Kevin traveled hundreds of miles from Florida to Texas. It wasn't coincidence. It wasn't chance. It was deliberate. The journey itself was a warning, though no one knew it at the time. This was not the act of a casual follower, but of a man consumed by a fixation powerful enough to uproot his life and drive him straight into hers. Red flags are often recognized only in hindsight. The obsession scribbled on those walls, the rambling apologies left behind, the manic declarations of love, they were the echoes of a mind unraveling. But by the time they were discovered, it was already too late. The silence before the storm had passed. Kevin was in Texas. He was at her door, and what followed would leave a family shattered, a community horrified, and millions of followers mourning the loss of a life cut short by a stranger who believed his obsession entitled him to everything, even her life. The final hours of Jenna Lynn Gagnier's life remain shrouded in silence, but what investigators pieced together paints a picture of terror inside her Richmond, Texas apartment. Kevin Alexander Accordo had made the long drive from Florida. A man who, by all accounts, had no personal relationship with Jenna, now stood inside her private sanctuary. How he entered remains uncertain. There were no signs of forced entry. Perhaps the door had been unlocked. Perhaps he followed her inside. Perhaps he found a way in without her noticing. What is certain is that when he crossed that threshold, everything changed. In the stillness of that August afternoon, Kevin confronted Jenna. The writings later found on her walls suggest a mind unraveling in real time. Ramblings of love, guilt, desperation, and the inevitability of what he was about to do. It was not the language of reason, but of obsession teetering on the edge of violence. Jenna was 33, strong-willed, vibrant, and healthy. But Kevin was determined, unstable, and armed with nothing more dangerous than his bare hands. And sometimes that is all it takes. The Harris County medical examiner would later confirm her cause of death: strangulation, coupled with a traumatic concussion. The details are clinical, but the reality is brutal. Somewhere between the confrontation and the end, Jenna fought for her life. She fought to breathe, to survive, but Kevin's grip was unrelenting. In those final moments, the glow of a life adored by millions was extinguished in silence. And when the act was done, Kevin turned his violence inward. Upstairs, he ended his own life, inflicting multiple sharp force injuries upon himself. His death was ruled a suicide. He had come to Texas not only to destroy Jenna, but to destroy himself. The apartment itself told the story. Her father would later describe the walls as defaced with writings, scrawled in lipstick or pen, cryptic messages, obsessive declarations, apologies to a woman he never truly knew. It was as if the entire home had been transformed into a shrine of delusion, the final stage for his madness. When Jenna's father arrived that day, what he found was unspeakable. His daughter's body lay lifeless at the bottom of the stairs. Upstairs, Kevin's body lay in a pool of his own blood, a scene of horror no parent should ever endure. The quiet community of Richmond was unprepared for such violence. This was not a robbery, not a domestic dispute, not a crime of passion between lovers. This was something far more chilling, a stranger crossing the line from obsession into murder. By the time police secured the scene, the damage was irreversible. Jenna's life was over, Kevin's life was over, and a story that began with beauty, success, and admiration ended in violence, madness, and silence. The crime itself was over in moments, but its impact would echo for years. When the first officers arrived at Jenna's apartment, the scene was suffocating in its silence. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of blood and the stillness of death. They moved carefully, documenting every detail, their cameras flashing against the stark contrast of luxury decor and madness scrawled on the walls. What they found told a story more disturbing than any single act of violence. The apartment had been transformed into a canvas for Kevin's unraveling mind. Words and phrases were written across surfaces in lipstick and marker. Rambling apologies, cryptic confessions, and fractured declarations of love. They were not coherent notes, but the fragmented thoughts of a man who had collapsed entirely into obsession. This was not a calculated cover-up. It was not the work of someone trying to hide their crime. It was a spectacle of delusion, as if Kevin had wanted the world, at least the small world inside those four walls, to see the chaos inside his head. His suicide upstairs left no doubt that he never intended to leave that apartment alive. The medical examiner's report clarified what had happened. Jenna's death was ruled a homicide, strangulation and blunt force trauma. Kevin's was ruled a suicide, multiple sharp force injuries, self-inflicted. It was a murder-suicide, but one of the most chilling kind, because it appeared motiveless in the traditional sense. No relationship, no feud, no money or jealousy, just fixation, pure and raw, turned deadly. Detectives scoured for connections. Was there evidence of communication between them? Had he stalked her physically before? Did he leave behind a trail of digital threats? The answer was shocking in its emptiness. Nothing. Investigators found no signs of prior contact. There were no restraining orders, no calls to the police about a stalker, no online exchanges between Jenna and Kevin. It was as if Kevin had constructed the entire relationship inside his own mind. To Jenna, he was a stranger. To him, she was everything. The police traced Kevin's steps back to Florida. His car had been found near the scene. Inside, investigators discovered more evidence of his deteriorating state. Journals and writings that mirrored the ramblings left on Jenna's walls. There was no clear plan, no detailed blueprint of the crime. Only obsession, traveling hundreds of miles until it arrived at her door. What unsettled the community most was the randomness of it all. This wasn't a case where a victim could have seen danger approaching. where the red flags were visible and ignored. Jenny was living her life, posting, sharing, working, connecting. And yet, in the background, a stranger was watching, planning, moving toward her with intentions only he fully understood. The investigation confirmed what her family already knew. She did not know Kevin. She never invited him into her life. She never had the chance to stop him. The conclusion was both devastating and terrifying. Sometimes, no matter how careful, no matter how private, no matter how strong the boundaries, someone else's obsession can break through. And in Jenny's case, it had cost her everything. In most true crime stories, the crime is only the beginning. What follows is a battle inside the courtroom, a pursuit of justice, a struggle to hold the guilty accountable. Families sit through trials, listening to gruesome details relived again and again, waiting for a verdict that will never truly heal their wounds. But in the case of Jenny Lynn Gagnier, there would be no trial. There would be no sentencing, because the man who killed her had taken his own life inside the very walls where he ended hers. For the legal system, the matter was straightforward. The evidence was overwhelming. The writings on the wall, the medical examiner's report, the lack of forced entry, the clear absence of any third party, all pointed to one conclusion. Kevin Alexander Accordo had murdered Jenny, and then, almost immediately, chosen to die himself. The investigation was closed as a murder-suicide. But for Jenny's family, closure was impossible. There would be no day in court where Kevin was forced to face their pain. No cross-examination to reveal what had been going through his mind. No jury to declare him guilty. Instead, all that remained were unanswered questions and a silence that the justice system could not fill. Why her? Why then? What had snapped in his mind to drive him across state lines into her home? The scribbled notes on the walls offered no real explanation. Just fragments of obsession, apologies that meant nothing, and declarations of a love that was never real. He had taken not only Jenny's life, but also the possibility of ever truly understanding why. In the absence of a trial, the aftermath shifted away from the courtroom and into the court of public opinion. For some, the case became a haunting reminder of the dangers of visibility in the digital age. For others, it was a story of failure, not by the police, not by Jenny, but by a society that still struggles to recognize the hidden dangers of obsession until it is far too late. The legal chapter was short, final, and unsatisfying. The paperwork closed the case. The medical examiner's report sealed the record. But for those who loved her, justice felt unfinished. Because when the killer dies with his victim, there is no justice, only loss. News of Jenny Lynn Gagnier's death spread like wildfire. To her family, the tragedy was unbearable. For her father, the image of discovering his daughter lifeless at the bottom of the stairs would never fade. No parent should have to witness such horror, and yet that was the final memory pressed into his mind. Her family described her not as the glamorous star known to millions online, but as a kind, quiet, deeply loving woman. Someone who valued privacy, who cherished her family above all else, and who lived far more simply than her online persona suggested. They wanted the world to remember Jenny as more than just Miss Mercedes Morr. The wider community mourned too. In Houston, crowds gathered for a balloon release, honoring the life that had been stolen. Fans who had known her only through glowing screens suddenly confronted the grim reality of her mortality, and the tributes poured in. Celebrities like Cardi B spoke out, condemning the cruel victim-blaming that surfaced online, reminding the world that Jenny had done nothing to deserve what happened. Drake himself dedicated his album Certified Lover Boy in her memory, acknowledging the light she carried and the darkness of her loss. It was a moment that revealed both the power and the peril of fame in the digital age. Jenny had inspired millions, but her visibility had also made her vulnerable to the kind of obsession that thrives in the shadows. Her death left a permanent scar, not only on her family and her city, but on the millions who admired her from afar. It raised chilling questions. How safe are we when strangers can cross the invisible boundary between online admiration and real-world intrusion? How do we protect those who live in the spotlight when obsession knows no limits? In the end, the story of Miss Mercedes Morr is not just about a murder. It's about the fragility of safety in a world where fame and visibility are both blessings and curses. It's about the human cost of obsession and the silence left behind when lives are stolen without reason. And as the final chapter of her story closes, one haunting truth lingers. Jenna Lynn Gagnier was loved by millions, but she was taken by one. What do you think? Was justice ever truly served in this case? Or is justice impossible when the killer escapes trial by taking his own life? I'd like to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you found this story haunting, don't forget to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe for more dark true crime stories told in depth. And make sure you turn on notifications so you never miss the next tale we uncover. Because every whispers tells a story.